Welcome to Co-Pilot Podcasts. Two women, both weapons forged in trauma's fire. One created in a lab, the other shaped by chaos magic. Today, we're diving deep into the mirrored journeys of X-23 and the Scarlet Witch, how their pain became power and their struggles led to redemption. You're about to discover how these two characters reflect the complex relationship between trauma and strength, and why their stories resonate so deeply with audiences.
And what's fascinating is how both these characters challenge our assumptions about trauma determining destiny. Recent research actually shows something pretty surprising about this in superhero narratives.
Oh, really? Tell me more about that.
Well, according to a fascinating study published in PLOS ONE this January, they found that childhood trauma scores weren't actually predictive of whether characters became heroes or villains in the Marvel and DC universes.
That's pretty groundbreaking, especially considering how often we see trauma used as a villain origin story.
Let's start with X-23, or Laura Kinney. She was literally created to be a weapon, a clone of Wolverine developed in a secret facility.
And they didn't exactly give her a gentle upbringing, did they?
Not at all. According to the source material, they subjected her to radiation poisoning to activate her mutant genes, and then coated her claws with adamantium without any anesthesia.
That's horrific.
And they went even further. They created what's called a trigger scent that would send her into an uncontrollable murderous rage. It's particularly tragic because this trigger led her to kill her own mother.
That reminds me a lot of Wanda Maximoff's struggle with her own powers.
Exactly. Both characters have powers that can sometimes control them rather than the other way around. With Wanda, it's her chaos magic, which according to the comics was granted to her by the god of chaos, Chthon.
And both of them experienced profound loss at young ages, right?
Yes, Wanda witnessed her parents' death in a bombing when she was just a child. The trauma of loss seems to be a recurring theme for both characters.
You know what's interesting? These stories are actually being used to help real children cope with trauma.
That's right. Recent research suggests these superhero narratives can serve as a conversational gateway for addressing difficult topics with children who've experienced trauma.
Can you explain how that works?
Well, according to healthcare researchers, these characters provide relatable examples that help reduce the stigma and shame associated with traumatic experiences. It gives children a way to discuss their feelings through the lens of characters they admire.
Let's talk about their powers. How do X-23 and Scarlet Witch compare?
They're actually quite different in terms of raw abilities. X-23 has all of Wolverine's healing powers, enhanced senses, and adamantium claws, though interestingly, she only has 2 claws per hand instead of 3, plus foot claws.
And Wanda?
Wanda's powers are described as literally unquantifiable in the comics. She can manipulate reality itself, perform incredible feats of magic, and is considered a Nexus being, someone who can affect probability and the future.
But both of them struggled with controlling these immense powers, right?
Absolutely. X-23's trigger scent and Wanda's chaos magic both represent this double-edged sword, incredible power that can also be their greatest weakness.
It's interesting how their trauma manifests differently, though.
Yes, X-23's trauma was very methodical, literally engineered by her creators, while Wanda's trauma often manifests through reality-warping events, like when she created an entire alternate reality in Westview.
And both have had to work through some pretty intense guilt, haven't they?
Definitely. The guilt of killing her mother has haunted X-23, while Wanda has had to cope with the consequences of her actions affecting entire populations.
Let's talk about healing. How have these characters worked toward redemption?
Well, X-23's journey involved finding her own identity beyond being a weapon. She's actually faster and more agile than Wolverine because she doesn't have a full adamantium skeleton weighing her down.
That's a pretty powerful metaphor, being lighter because she's carrying less burden.
Exactly. And with Wanda, we've seen her working to understand and control her powers rather than being controlled by them. Though it's been a rocky road.
You know what strikes me? Both of these characters could have easily become villains, given their backgrounds.
And that brings us back to that research I mentioned earlier. The study found no statistical correlation between childhood trauma scores and whether characters became heroes or villains.
That's pretty hopeful, isn't it?
It really is. It suggests that no one is doomed by their past experiences. It's about the choices we make and the support we receive.
Speaking of support, both characters found healing through connections with others, right?
Yes, X-23 found a family with the X-Men, while Wanda has had various support systems throughout her journey, though they haven't always been stable.
It's interesting how their powers reflect their emotional states.
Absolutely. X-23's berserker rages and Wanda's reality warping both tend to manifest most strongly when they're experiencing intense emotional distress.
And both have had to learn to channel that intensity in more constructive ways.
Right. It's about transforming trauma into strength, but not letting it consume you.
You mentioned earlier about using these stories to help children process trauma. Can you elaborate on that?
According to the University of Calgary research, these superhero narratives can be particularly effective because they remove the stigma from discussing difficult topics.
And I imagine it helps that these are such powerful characters, despite their trauma.
Exactly. It shows that experiencing trauma doesn't define you or limit what you can achieve.
Let's talk about their different approaches to power. X-23 is very physical, while Wanda's powers are more mystical.
Yes, and that reflects their different traumas too. X-23's physical powers mirror the physical abuse she endured, while Wanda's reality warping abilities connect to her emotional and psychological trauma.
That's a fascinating parallel I hadn't considered before.
And it shows in how they heal too. X-23's physical healing factor is literal, while Wanda's journey often involves healing reality itself.
Both of them have had to learn that having power doesn't necessarily mean having control.
That's such a crucial point. Both characters have had to learn that true strength isn't just about raw power, it's about wisdom and self-control.
And their redemption arcs really emphasize that, don't they?
Yes, both characters have had to learn that redemption isn't a destination, it's an ongoing process of growth and healing.
What do you think makes their stories resonate so deeply with audiences?
I think it's because they show that even the most damaged people can find purpose and meaning. Their trauma doesn't define them, it's part of their story, but not the whole story.
And that's a pretty powerful message for anyone dealing with their own trauma.
Absolutely. These characters show that healing is possible, even if it's not always a straight line.
Do you think that's why these characters have such staying power in popular culture?
I think so. Their struggles feel authentic because they're not simple or easy. They make mistakes, they fall down, but they keep trying to do better.
And that's really what redemption is about, isn't it?
Exactly. It's not about being perfect, it's about continuing to move forward despite your past.
As we wrap up, what do you think is the most important lesson from these characters' journeys?
I think it's that trauma may shape us, but it doesn't have to define us. Both X-23 and Scarlet Witch show that it's possible to transform pain into purpose.
And that's what makes their stories so powerful. They're not just about having superpowers, they're about the power to change and heal.
Exactly. Their journeys remind us that even in our darkest moments, there's always a path forward.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Copilot Podcasts. Remember, whether you're dealing with trigger sense or chaos magic, it's not the trauma that defines you, it's how you choose to move forward. Thanks for listening.